Hey kids, this is Ivan. How you doing? I want to ask you a question. I want to see what your perspective is on this because I'm having trouble coming up with really good answers. So, what happened was this. In a discussion group about role-playing games, and one of my friends posed a question to the group. And to preserve his anonymity, we'll call this person Manthony. Anyhow, what he asked us was this. He started talking about the genre problem, the issue of conveying the genre of a game to players. I don't know if you've ever had that experience where you try to run a game and it's of a specific genre, a specific type, and you realize all of a sudden that the players, or some of the players, don't understand what that genre is, and they're doing things that are simply inappropriate. They're playing Call of Cthulhu like it's Dungeons and Dragons, and there's a clash of what it's supposed to feel like and what it's ending up feeling like, because it's not because of any malintent. It's just a misunderstanding. So, here's the question he posed to us. Come up with a short but effective way to convey a genre for the purpose of something like a one-shot or like a short series of games. However, here's the caveat. See if you can do it without using one of the three tried and true methods. The first one being you interrupt play and in some way, shape, or form say, hey, you're doing this wrong. You're misunderstanding what your character would do here, or what the feel is. A game like Tech Noir literally instructs you to stop play. If players start doing that, they create the wrong type of character, what have you. Second one being that you have that big session zero, where you all sit down and you hash out ideas and whatnot, but you explain, okay, well, this is what the genre is like. If you don't understand what Lovecraft is like, here's some tips. Here's the basic feel we're going for. This isn't going to be a hack and slash leveling type game where we acquire fame and treasure and wealth. It's investigative horror, that sort of thing. Or the third method, which is that you refer people to media, books, film, TV, whatever it happens to be, that exemplify the genre. So if we're going to play Call of Cthulhu or Leagues of Cthulhu, I might tell somebody to read a bunch of Lovecraft. And if we're not going for the kind of you versus the mythos feel, I would say, well, you can read some, I don't know, August Derleth and say, okay, well, this right here is not the feel we're going for. The names are all right, but we're leaning more towards the slow descent into madness, the person that just discovers a thing they wish they hadn't, that sort of thing. So so you direct them to the right type of media. So how? Go back to that original question. How do you convey the genre in a short yet effective manner without relying on those three big tried and true methods? And this was a head scratcher for me. I really had to stop and think. And I'll give you some of the things I came up with. And he had some follow-up questions. He asked, can we actually figure out another way to convey the genre, any given genre, without that in a short and effective manner? If we do discover some other ways to convey that genre, will we like them? Will they work for us? And the third one, if we fail to find any other methods of conveying the genre, what will that tell us? Really provocative questions. Because I started to think about it. First I think, okay, well, this is going to be easy. You can figure some ways to do that. But I started thinking, okay, well, maybe like you're at a con game, and that little blurb that you might see, instead of saying, well, the princess has been, taken from the castle, and you and a brave group of Vikings must travel to the land of blah, blah, blah to go rescue her from the evil lord. Okay, the usual description of what the game might be like. Instead, you might find a little paragraph or blurb explaining to you that this is a game of investigative horror, where you play, everymen and academics. You get the idea. But that's really kind of like a very short mini session zero, isn't it? You could maybe refer people to things as you do your one shot and say things like, well, it's kind of like this, or it's kind of like that. But once again, you're kind of referring them to media. You're not telling them to go watch it, but you're referring this other media. You might say, well, it's a little bit like Millennium. But then you're relying on them to know what the hell Millennium is at that point, and how many people know what that show was. So once again, it kind of dovetails off of that. And the stopping and interrupting play thing too, at some point we're probably going to end up doing that. So the only other thing I could think of off the top of my head was, and it seems like a really trite and expected answer from a person like me, if you watch the channel long enough, is I tried to go into a game figuring out, okay, what is this scenario really like? Then what is my character really like? And what would this person do if these circumstances were actually real? When Anthony ran a game of Leagues of Gothic Horror for me, and a couple other guys, which is a blast, it's on his channel, I kind of sussed out and figured out exactly what kind of vibe he was going for. I knew the genre, and he also provided us with some characters that had a bit of backstory, and so I was able to figure out pretty fast, what is this guy like? I observed the scenario and realized, what would this person do? It was kind of a descent into depravity, for lack of a better word, but I don't want to ruin the session if you ever want to go watch it. But it involves a meat cleaver. That's really about it. Anthony also asked us, think of this from the perspective of a player and the perspective of a game master. I can tell you, as a player, I'm always very uncomfortable if I don't really understand what the genre is. When Anthony ran a game of Leagues of, I don't know, it was Hollow Earth Expedition for Jason and myself, he went for a particular feel, and he said, well, you know what, go watch Treasure of the Sierra Madre. Jason knew exactly what he was talking about right away. I hadn't watched the movie, so I had to go rent it on Amazon and watch that. And then, oh, okay, I understand what these characters or the vibe he's going for is going to be like. He referred me to some sort of media at that point. If I don't understand the genre and really unfamiliar with what we're going for, what everybody else expects, I'm a little bit uncomfortable. And I can fall back on my stock way of playing, but that doesn't always fit. So if I'm not getting the genre conveyed to me in an effective manner, I'm always a little bit uncomfortable. And as a game master, it can be uncomfortable if the players just don't get the feel you're going for, and they act in ways that are searching for a word other than inappropriate. But sometimes you can simply act inappropriate for the genre. You can play your character wrong or play the game wrong, and it's just as frustrating to be sitting next to somebody that doesn't quite get it. It's probably the most uncomfortable when you realize you're the one that's not getting it, and everybody else is looking at you and saying, "What the hell are you doing, buddy?" So, really interesting, provocative question. So, video went a little longer than I wanted to, but yeah, think about this. Is there a way to convey a genre? It's short and effective, but doesn't rely on stopping play and correcting inappropriate behaviors, doesn't rely on a session 0 where you explain the genre, and doesn't rely upon direction to examples in media. I'd like to hear what your thoughts on this are, because it's really puzzling to me, very provocative though.